every day was the same, so when Anne woke up at 6 a.m, she expected it to be no different. She prepared herself for the day first, reviewing her care notes as she did. Then at 7 a.m. exactly, she headed to Mr. Richards' room to wake him up. She went down the carpeted corridor and stood outside his room. As usual, she heard the croaky voice of Mr. Richards. The door muffled the sound, so she couldn't hear exactly what he was saying. No matter. She rapped her knuckles on the wood twice in quick succession. "Mr. Richards, I'm coming in," she called before opening the door. Mr. Richards was perched on the side of the bed, back hunched, facing the window. He turned around to look at her, dark bags underneath his eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Richards," Anne said brightly. "How did you sleep?" She went to the wheelchair in the corner of the room and moved it next to him. "I didn't sleep," Mr. Richards said. Timothy was sad and he needed comforting. Anne helped Mr. Richards into the wheelchair. "Timothy might be sad, but he must understand that you need your rest. It's important. Timothy is more important," Mr. Richards snapped. "I know he is important, but so is your sleep," Anne cooed softly. She pushed the wheelchair to the bathroom and worked briskly and methodically. Toilet, face washing, teeth brushing and shaving. When they were done, she checked his vital signs and then reached into her pocket to pull out the small tub of tablets. When she handed one to Mr. Richards, he frowned. "Timothy says you are making me worse with this. He says I should stop taking these pills and let my natural mind soar like the birds amongst the clouds." Anne smiled warmly, like she did every day. "Yes, Timothy doesn't like the medication, but I assure you, Mr. Richards, it is for your own good. Remember what we say, Timothy means well, but he does not know well." Mr. Richards looked thoughtful for a moment. "He means well indeed." Then he popped the pill into his mouth and drank from the glass that Anne handed him. At 8:30 a.m, she took him downstairs and left him in the dining room with a newspaper while she started making breakfast. Like usual, Mr. Richards only looked at the pictures, but when he got to the crossword at the back, he held the newspaper to the side as if showing it to someone looking over his shoulder. There was no one to be seen, of course, but that was to be expected. It was the same thing every day after all. At exactly 9 a.m, breakfast was served. A soft omelette with whole grain toast, no butter, stewed prunes and a glass of orange juice. Anne helped Mr. Richards eat, dutifully spooning the meal into his mouth and waiting patiently for him to chew and swallow. He wasn't a slow eater, not compared to some patients she had worked with, but he wasn't particularly a fast one either. At 9:30 a.m, he was finished and Anne washed the plates. Then she took Mr. Richards back upstairs to dress him in the clothes he would be wearing for the day. They had to change the outfit thrice, as they did every day, because Timothy predictably disliked outfits with runes. Anne had given up trying to convince Mr. Richards to wear what she wanted long ago. She got him to take the medication, so Timothy got to choose the outfit. Those were the rules. It was still worth a try each day though. 10 a.m, some gentle stretching. 10:30 a.m, a hydration break. In the past, Anne had tried to mix up the activities for a cognitive engagement at 11 a.m, yet she had found that anything other than listening to classical music made Timothy kick up a fuss, and that in turn meant Mr. Richards would kick up a fuss. Then it was lunch at noon, followed by another medication round, but it wasn't until 1 p.m, when Mr. Richards took his nap, that Anne had time to begin her preparations for the night ahead. She used to always need her book of runes, but she had done it so many times at this point she knew the runes off by memory now. She drew the symbols all over Mr. Richards' room in chalk as he slept, and Timothy's presence grew stronger. She was finished by 2:30 p.m, when nap time ended, and after a quick bathroom break, the social activity started. Anne had tried to get neighbours to visit or family to call in, but Timothy scared them all away. So now all Mr. Richards could do was watch TV. It made Anne sad, but he didn't seem lonely. Mr. Richards was perfectly happy with Timothy's company alone. She watched as he kept turning to his side, where there was a slight glimmer in the air, laughing at the jokes and pointing things out on the TV. Anne dared not leave, even for a moment. One time she had, and the TV had upset Timothy. What happened next almost lost her the job. No, she dared not leave, not while the TV was on. At 4 p.m. was the afternoon snack, followed by allowing Mr. Richards to sit on the porch and breathe in some fresh air. He quite liked the neighbour's dog and would often watch it as it played in the yard next door, but no matter how he sometimes called out to the dog, it never came, not while Timothy was there. At 5 p.m. Anne started to prepare dinner. By 5:30 p.m. it was done. By 6 p.m. Mr. Richards had been fed, satiated and medicated. This was his reading reading time, and thankfully reading never upset Timothy. He was a dark outline moving through the air like a cloud of shadow now, sticking by the side of Mr. Richards at all times. Anne took this time to change her clothes into her robes, with the same runes she had chalked around the bedroom. She took her staff as well, with the bright yellow crystal on one end glowing ever so faintly. She strapped it to her back so it could be kept out of the way until it was needed. It was the same every day, so she knew when that would be. At 8 p.m, the nighttime routine started, with Anne assisting with toileting, washing and changing Mr. Richards into his nightwear. Now Timothy was close to being solid, with horns visible at the top of his head and his fingers and toes ending in claws an inch long. There were no details, not yet, but the form was there, and if one were to touch him, the hand would go through, but with difficulty, like pushing your hand through honey. Anne had tried it once and regretted it for a long time afterwards. Timothy became especially vicious when he was touched in his vulnerable state like that. At 9:30 p.m, Anne lifted Mr. Richards out of his wheelchair and helped him into bed. Okay, Mr. Richards, make sure you stay in bed and don't move like usual. Are you going to hurt Timothy again? Mr. Richards asked. Anne gave him a practiced smile. Timothy and I are just going to have a little chat, she said, glancing at the form that was getting ever more solid. She could see the colour of the skin now, a deep red like spilled blood. Just stay in bed and don't move, Anne told him before glancing at her watch. It was coming to 10 p.m, she had to be ready. She closed the door to the bedroom, then took her staff from her back. She stood facing Timothy, and as his form solidified even more, she started to chant. The words of old she called upon, words that had been lost to almost all of mankind, yet she still remembered them. She chanted and her voice started to echo. As her voice echoed, the runes on the walls began to glow a bright yellow. Then the clock hit 10 p.m, and a blast of purple energy exploded from where Timothy stood. Anne smashed the butt of her staff to the ground, dispersing the purple energy, and then looked up to see the demon fully formed in front of her. It was so tall that the curved horns protruding from its head almost touched the high ceiling. It was humanoid in form, with defined muscles rippling under its deep red skin. From its back sprung two large leathery bat-like wings and a long tail ending in a sharp fang. Its red eyes shone with the reflection of the runes as he glared at Anne. His soul will be mine, the demon, Timothax roared, his voice sending vibrations through the foundations of the house itself. You will never lay claim to his soul as long as I may live, Anne shouted back as she lifted her staff and banged it against the floor again. The runes shone a brighter yellow. Then you shall die tonight, Timothax bellowed as he tensed his muscles, ready to pounce like a predator looking at its prey. Then the demon charged. He only managed to move a few feet before the runes did their work, freezing him in place. His right arm was stretched outward, the claws pointed towards Anne, but he couldn't reach her like he wanted. Anne nodded in satisfaction, then pointed the crystal on the top of the staff at him. Blood of stars and cosmic light, diminish your unholy might. Chains of 7 worlds entwine, your essence trapped by my design. Timothax let out a roar in anguish, but Anne, undeterred, continued. From terror vast to shadow small, banished by my arcane call, Timothax started to twist unnaturally. His arms turned a complete 360 degrees. His horns curved inwards, piercing his skull, and his tail began tearing apart like a sheet of paper being ripped in two. Anne kept on chanting. By ancient powers that bind the void, Timothax, your form I now destroy. From the crystal on her staff shone a pure yellow light, brighter than all the runes put together. It bathed over Timothax, who roared and struggled, but there was nothing he could do. The room continued to fill with the yellow light. The intensity of it overcame all the senses, not just sight. Anne could taste the yellow on her tongue, feel it in her bones. It filled her nostrils with an overwhelming scent and rang in her ears like an earthquake. Then in a flash, it was gone, leaving only darkness in its wake. I summoned light, Anne whispered, and the crystal on her staff shone again, this time with an orange glow and much, much dimmer. Timothax was nowhere to be seen, but Anne could still sense him. He was always there. "Is he hurt?" came Mr. Richards' croaky voice. "No, Mr. Richards. Timothy is just tired is all," Anne said between deep gulping breaths. She went over to him and pulled the sheets tightly up to his neck. "Go to sleep now and try not to stay up talking. You must get your rest." "Okay," Mr. Richards said. With that, Anne left the room, closing the door behind her, and sighed. She walked to her room since she needed to get some rest as well. The spell always took a lot out of her, and every day was the same.